Coming back, our topic is something called immediately invoked function expression. So let's take a look at what they are. So sometimes in JavaScript, we need a function that is only executed once and they never again. So basically a function that disappears after it is called once. So this might not appear to make much sense right now, but we actually need this technique later. For example, with something called async or await. So how could you do that? Well, we could simply create a function and then execute it once. So let's just say here one constant run once function of, here we'll just say console.log. This will never run again. Okay, here we'll just say run once, as you can. So however, we can actually run this function again at some other point of time in our code. If you want to, right? So we can simply just say like this as well, right? Whenever we want. But right now we don't require this. So there is nothing stopping us from later doing run again once. So this is not what we wanted to do. We wanted actually to execute a function immediately and not even having to save it somewhere. And so this is how we do that. And we simply write a function expression itself without assigning it to any variable. So when we say this, here we'll just copy this and here we'll just paste it, and then when we run it, as you can see here, here we are getting the syntax error, right? So in order to bypass this, there is a loop in JavaScript. So simply just loop it in the parentheses and then simply add the brackets, and then see, now it automatically removes the error and then it runs. However, we can actually run this function again at some other point in our code if we want to. Now, if we do like this, we get no error, but this function doesn't execute yet. Yeah, right. So we never called it, and so we know that there is here a function. So we can then immediately call it. So with this, we'll get now the text here logged to the console to the string. So indeed here is that. So it is just the function value. It is just a function expression. So then immediately we call it here. And so this is why this pattern here is called immediately invoked function expression. The same would of course also work for the arrow function as well. So here we write the arrow function, and then here we just copy this and paste it. See here, this is how we write by the arrow function. We get the same output. So this here we just wrote using the function, and then this is for arrow. Okay. You might be wondering why this pattern actually invented. Well, we know that the functions create scopes, right? So what's important here is that one scope does not have access to variable from an inner scope, right? For example, right here in the global scope, we don't have access to any variables that are defined in the scope. So any of these functions right here, for example, let's just add here the variable here. Here, let's add constant is. For example, if we write this here is private here 22, and then here we'll just simply console.log is private when we do this here, it won't be, so it is not going to work because the scope chain only works to other way around. The inner scope would have access to anything defined outside here in the global scope, okay? But the other way around, the global scope does not have access to anything that is inside of the scope. So in this case, of the scope created by the function here, therefore, we say that all the data defined inside a scope is private, and we say that the data is encapsulated. For example, is privated here is encapsulated instead of the function scope that created here, and data encapsulated and data privacy are extremely important concepts in programming. So many times we actually need to protect our variables from being accidentally overwritten by some other parts of the program, or even with the extended scripts or libraries. So I'm going to talk in detail about these concepts in the object-oriented programming section. But for now, keep in mind that it is important to hide the variables. That scopes are good tools for doing that, and it is also the reason why we invoked function expression were invented. So basically, this pattern here, it is not really a feature of JavaScript language. It is more of a pattern that some developers came up with it. So, do you remember what also creates a scope in ES6? That's right. Variables declared with a let or constant creates their own scope inside a block. So, whenever we create a block like this, so let me just show you here. So, when we write this like this here, this could be accessible. Let me just turn this here off and then run it. See here, var could be accessible. As you can see here, we got the value 46. So this that's because the one here was declared with the var, and so therefore it does not completely ignore the block here essentially. And this is the reason why now in modern JavaScript, immediate invoked function expressions are not that used anymore, because if we all want is to create a new scope for data privacy, all we need to do is to just create a block like this, right? And there is no need to create a function to create a new scope, unless of course we want to use var for our variables. But we already know we probably shouldn't do that, right? Now on the other hand, if we really need to execute a function just once, then the IIFE, so the immediate invoked function expression pattern is still the way to go. Even now, the modern JavaScript, and we actually see a greater use case a bit later of doing an IIFE. Okay, that's it for this video.